Time to take a look at the episode The Secret of Grayskull, which I previously referenced briefly in my Kobra Khan episode reviews. The reason I didn't review it then was twofold. Firstly, there was the simple fact that Kobra Khan wasn't really a central character in this episode, with him being just a background character. Not only that, he didn't even get to use any of his special powers, which not only made this a piss-poor appearance by the character, but a very unmemorable one to boot. And for the second time, Skeletor calls him Kobra Khan for no apparent reason.
Chain her up, Kobra Khan!
What, did Alan Oppenheimer just not get that that's the character's name? Or did he honestly think that Kublai Khan was actually going to be in this episode? Now, the second reason I didn't review this episode as a part of that review video was that the episode itself is very interesting, and since the Kobra Khan video was running a bit long anyway, I decided not to do it an injustice, and instead felt that it deserved its own review video. So without further ado, let's start with the plot. The episode begins with a random attack on the palace, where even King Randor decides to join in on the fun for once. And why shouldn't he, since this seems to be yet another episode where the palace guards decide to take a holiday and leave the fortress undefended. Orko annoys Man-at-Arms again, as he usually does, but this time his callous attitude really gets him down, and so he goes off to mope in the woods. As it would happen, Skeletor sees that Orko's feeling miserable and decides to enforce this downer by pretending to be a genie and trying to talk him into going back to Trolla. Oh boy, we're not even halfway through the episode and we're having to endure this crap. Luckily though, the sorceress intervenes, rescues Orko, and shows how useful Orko's been in the past, before finally revealing that the genie was Skeletor all along. Although, I gotta question the sorceress's methods here. Couldn't she have told Orko that the random genie was bullshitting him from the get-go? Or did they just need to kill some running time? And then Orko flies through the woods and gets captured by Skeletor again. For fuck's sake, Orko. Now, in what can be considered one of the weirdest scenes in He-Man history, Skeletor holds Orko hostage in a rocket and asks a riddle from the drawbridge, yes, the friggin' drawbridge, to get into Grayskull. However, once inside, Skeletor launches Orko into the sky anyway, but luckily by then He-Man decides to show up and save Orko. After he's done so and spoken to the sorceress telepathically, she then starts wailing away at the villains with her magic, forcing Skeletor and his lackeys to leave. Now, honestly, The Secret of Grayskull holds a lot of mixed feelings for me as an episode. On one hand, it has some pretty cool one-off elements that aren't seen in any other He-Man episode. On the other hand, it's got way too much stupid crap to be considered a standout episode. One of the most inexcusable writing decisions for this episode, in my view, was making Orko feel like he's useless and always in everyone's way. Now, I could maybe accept this being a real feeling for Orko if this was still the first season of He-Man, and maybe if the episode's events were placed a bit earlier in the series where Orko had yet to have established his place in He-Man's entourage. But this episode happens over halfway through the second season, which has the unintended effect of having Orko feel bad about himself, feel completely out of character. This I'm useless and need to go away story setup always tends to rub me the wrong way. The only time it's really ever worked in He-Man was in the episode Teela's Trial. There, at least, it was acceptable because Teela thought she had killed her father. She wasn't just getting scolded, which is something that happens to Orko in literally every other episode he's in. And yeah, Skeletor dressed as a genie, pretty fucking cliched, but I'm at least genuinely impressed that he actually wears a believable disguise. Although again, Orko listening to the words of a random-ass genie he doesn't know from Adam is again kinda strange. The episode writer John Curtin also wrote The Things That Go Bump in the Night, which was also about teaching children important lessons, but this and that episode were his only two writing credits on He-Man. So I suppose we can put this down to him not being overly familiar with the series conventions. This is also probably why the drawbridge telling a riddle scene is in the episode too. I'm not gonna defend it because it's just stupid and it gets under my skin for also being a part of He-Man lore that's never seen in any other episode. And if any old schmuck can enter Grayskull by answering stupid riddle, you'd have to wonder why Skeletor doesn't just do that every time. Now, it's actually the latter half of this episode, which is really the cool part in my view. Firstly, I do love that the sorceress goes out of her way not to have Orko launch into space, and then whoops the asses of the villains. This is the reason I really like the Rainbow Warrior too, but there is something slightly amiss about it. Now, I do have to say that Skeletor was maybe a little optimistic to try to defeat the sorceress inside Grayskull, but I also find the fact that the sorceress is able to defend herself so readily after He-Man's rescued Orko kinda problematic. I mean, Skeletor's overpowered the sorceress before, usually with the help of some creature or magical artifact, but he even managed to capture her all by himself in the episode The Taking of Grayskull. The sorceress has never really put up a fight, and only ever managed to inconvenience Skeletor. And besides, it's not really the sorceress's duty to fight Skeletor. That's He-Man's job. And he's conveniently absent for about 90% of this episode. But it's okay, I understand, the sorceress does have more power inside Grayskull, but I still find it funny how easily she disposes of Skeletor's henchmen. And these aren't any one-off henchmen either. That's Clawful, Kobra Khan, and Trapjaw with them. That they all just run around and bump into each other like morons. And that's just kind of the big problem of this episode. It showcases not one, but 3 of Skeletor's boneheaded plots in one episode. The final parts of this episode are actually pretty neat, with the sorceress warping Grayskull to trick the villains. Now, the animation quality is superb, and it almost makes it a shame that in all, this is a pretty dumb episode. However, it's at least so dumb that it's also entertaining to boot. So yes, I guess you could give it a watch if you wanted to see the sorceress kick some ass. But just be prepared, there's a lot of dumb shit as well. And that's all from me for now. I'm TheHande. Until next time, I have the power, so can you.